Previously on Unfinished Business.
So Fog's got the lead here. Tobin White coming strong. 4:47. It looks like Fog's got his qualifier.
After running a World Junior qualifier in the 1500 metres, FOGDOG headed to Sydney for the 2018 Under-20 Australian Athletics Championships.
As you can see, as well,
after running a great heat to qualify for the national Under-20 1500 metre final, a disappointing run saw FOGDOG miss out on selection for the World Under-20 Championships, ending his World Under-20 Championships campaign.
Welcome to the final episode of Unfinished Business. For those of you who saw the preview for the final episode of Unfinished Business, you'll have seen that we're moving on from my final season as a junior athlete in 2018, and I'm going to be showing you some of my best races since 2018, including my first Open National 1500 metre final, the Great Britain Under-23 1500 metre final, and my 340 PB 1500 metres. Alright, so as you might have seen in previous episodes of Unfinished Business, 2018 was my final year as a junior athlete, and I missed out on making the World Junior team, but I ran a World Junior qualifier, and this, even though it was quite disappointing not to get into that World Junior team to travel to Finland and run at the World Under-20 Championships, it set me up really well for my first year as an open athlete going into 2019. So the first race I'm going to be showing you today is my 2019 Open Nationals 1500 metre heat. I went into 2019 Open Nationals with a 1500 metre PB of 3:45.8. And my goal for the championships, as it was my first year as an open athlete, was just to make the Open National 1500 metre final. I knew it was definitely going to be tough to try and make the final as there were so many big names running at nationals, but I knew that if I could run well and have a really good race in my heat, I definitely had a good chance of getting into that final. In order to actually qualify for the Open National 1500 metre final, there were 3 separate heats, and I was in the second of those heats. And from the heats, the top 3 athletes to cross the line were guaranteed to make the final, and then if you weren't in the top 3 athletes to cross the line, you had to be in the next 3 fastest qualifying times from the heats. So without further ado, this is the 2019 Australian Open Nationals 1500 metre heat.
But yeah, I'm glad they actually did that because it's absolutely that.
Alright, so this is my 2019 Australian Open National 1500 metre heat. I'm in there in position 4 wearing the orange spikes, and I went into this race with a PB of 3:45.8 from the Sydney Track Classic a few weeks prior to Nationals. And going into this race, definitely not anywhere near a favourite. In this race, there's Ryan Gregson, James Hansen and Matt Ramsden. But it is only a heat, and so I knew that if I could run well and have a good day on the track, I had an outside chance of making the Open National 1500 metre final. We are coming up to the 800 metre split here. I'd got myself up into 4th place, and that's James Hansen, Ryan Gregson and Matt Ramsden in front of me. The top 3 from this heat automatically make the final, and if you're not in the top 3, you had to be in the next 3 fastest times from the heats overall. So I knew it was going to be tough to get into that top 3, so I really wanted to hang on for as good a time as I could possibly run. we hit the 800 meter mark just before in 2 minutes flat, which for me at the time was very quick. It's pretty much bang on what my PB pace was at the time. So I just wanted to kind of hang on and finish as well as I possibly could. Coming into the home straight, I was still comfortably in that 4th place. I'd had a bit of a look around and knew that I was going to finish in 4th. I knew that I probably couldn't catch any of the top 3, so I had to finish as fast as I could, and I ended up crossing the line in a PB of 3:44.06, which turned out to be good enough to qualify me for my first Open National 1500 meter final. Alright, so I was really happy with the way that heat turned out. Obviously, I wasn't in the top 3, so I didn't qualify automatically for the final, but my time of 3:44.06, which was a new PB for me, ended up being fast enough to qualify me for my first Open National 1500 meter final. So the next race I'm going to be showing was 2 days later. We had a recovery day between the heat and the final. So without further ado, this is my first Open National 1500 meter final. I went into this one quite nervous. I wasn't really expecting too much, but being my first year as an Open athlete and being in my first Open National 1500 meter final, it was reasonably intimidating. But in saying that, I was very happy to have just made the final in the first place. Alright, so this is the 2019 Australian Open National 1500 meter final. I'm wearing the exact same kit as I was in the heat, but I'm in position 10. Got the orange spikes on again, and I definitely went into this one not really expecting too much. I was really happy to have made the final. I got a PB in the heat and had a really good run in the heats to actually qualify for the final in the first place. So I just wanted to get in and have as good a run in the final as I could. This is probably the most stacked race I've ever been in, so it's got a load of sub 4 minute milers, a couple of Olympians. So Luke Matthews is there leading it. He was the back-to-back-to-back Australian 800 meter champion in 2016, 2017 and 2018. Rory Hunter is on the shoulder of Luke Matthews early on, and then Ryan Gregson, the Australian 1500 meter record holder, is also in the race, as well as Matt Ramsden, who made the 2016 World Junior 1500 meter final. We went through 800 just there in about 2:09, I think, so it was very tactical and slow early on, but you can see I'm already off the back. I don't really know why, I just didn't really feel good on the day. I kind of think that mentally going into this one, I'd achieved what I wanted to achieve going into nationals. I really wanted to make the Open National final, and then once I made it, I didn't really go into this one too confident, and it definitely didn't help me. Alright, so on the final lap, I knew that I was completely out of the race. I just did not have a good day at all, but I was actually still running quite fast. I ended up closing my final 800 in 1 minute and 57 seconds, which at the time was still a really decent kind of finish for me. But I ended up coming in 12th place and I ran 3:50, which actually wasn't really a bad time to be honest, but Luke Matthews ended up winning in 3:43, so I was quite a long way back from that. Alright, so that was definitely a very disappointing finish to my first nationals as an Open athlete, but as I mentioned, I was very happy to have just made that Open National 1500 meter final. And even though I definitely wanted to do better on the day of the final, I was really happy to have been there in the first place, and I definitely gained a lot of experience from racing at that top level. So moving on from my first nationals as an Open athlete, a couple of months later I flew to England and did a 6-week stint in England training and racing. And so the next race I'm going to show you is the 2019 Great Britain Under 23 1500 meter final. At the time of this race, my 1500 meter PB was still 3:44. 24.06 from Australian Open Nationals, where I ran that in my 1500 metre heat. And in order to make the final at the 2019 Great Britain Under 23 Championships, I got through my 1500 metre heat comfortably in 3rd place. And so without further ado, this is the 2019 Great Britain Under 23 1500 metre final.
So in the final we have Attribution, of Windsor, Edison, Southampton, then the Crew, Hallamshire, Lakemore, Windsor,
Alright, so this is the 2019 Great Britain Under 23 1500 metre final. I'm wearing position number 10 on my leg, and I've got the red and yellow singlet on in this one. I qualified comfortably through my heat to make this final, and I went into the final with the 4th fastest PB. So Jake Hayward, who's there leading, had a PB of 3:36 going into this race. Piers Copeland on the outside in the red singlet had run 3:39 going into this one, and Archie Davis, who's in a white singlet in the middle of the pack, had a PB of 3:42 going into it. And then I had the next fastest PB with the 3:44 from the national 1500 metre heat in Australia. Early on, this race was very tactical. We went through the first 300 in 48 seconds, which was alright, but then the brakes were put on and we come up to the 700 metre mark here in 1:58. So we had a 1:10 for the second 400 there.
Can't move matches. Very steady anymore.
We ended up going through 800 in about 2 minutes and 15 seconds, which was very slow. It was very tactical. And then coming into the home straight here with 500 meters to go, I'd moved my way up into 3rd place. I was in a really good spot on the shoulder of Piers Copeland, just going past Jake Hayward. And we went through the bell in 2 minutes and 57 seconds. So we dropped a 59-second lap just there, going into the bell lap. So the pace was really starting to pick up, and I was in a great spot on the shoulder of Jake Hayward, trying to push for the lead going down the back straight.
Down the back straight, still Hayward.
Who's the commentary guy?
Then Adam Todd, then Piers Copeland, to go,
That's an Australian or American.
With 150 to go, I'd gone back into 3rd place, and I was really quite lactic by this point. I was very tired and I just wanted to hang on and finish well for a medal. However, unfortunately for me, Archie Davis was having a really fast finish, and he ended up just out dipping me on the line by 0.1 of a second, and I ended up closing my final 800 in 1:53 with a 54-second final lap to finish 4th in 3 minutes and 51 seconds. Alright, so I was really happy with how that race turned out. Obviously, I just missed out on a medal in the end. Archie Davis called me on the line, and I ended up coming 4th by 0.11 of a second. So even though I just missed out on a medal, I was really happy with how I ran. I came 4th at the Great Britain Under 23 Championships, which was a really good result for me. And I was actually really happy with how I ran the race, because in the past I've never really been able to close that hard. But on that day, I ran a 1:53 last 800 with a 54-second final 400. And so I was showing really good signs of having an improved finishing kick going into my final 1500 metre race in England, which was being held a week later in Watford at the British Milers Club. So the next race I'm going to be showing you is my 1500 metre PB to this day. I actually haven't run a 1500 metre race since this day. And on this day, I went into it. It was my final race of the English summer. I really wanted to have a good run, and it was being set up perfectly to run a fast time. Andy Butchard, the 2016 Rio Olympic finalist in the 5K, was in the race. I was feeling good, and I had a lot of family there to support me. So my mum was there, my cousins were there, and I had my granddad there from England as well. and my dad was back home in Australia watching on the live stream, as well as some of my friends. Also, with this race, I am going to show you it in full right now, but in the future I'm going to make a video that goes into detail about how I was feeling going into this race, how my training had been, and I will be commentating on the full race to kind of give you a full insight into kind of how I was feeling going into and then running my 1500 meter PB of 3:40. That is still my 1500 meter PB to this day.
Struggle, it didn't go. I just think it's there.
Some indoor stuff.
Did 400 earlier.
Oh yeah, it did.
On the inside lane though, so you better go quick. Go on, Dom.
Alright, so this is the final race of my 2019 summer season in England, and it was a BMC meet held in Watford. There was a huge field of quality runners, and the favourite going into it was definitely Andy Butchart, who was a finalist in the 2016 Rio Olympic 5K. I'm wearing the red and yellow singlet again in this one, and at this early stage of the race we're 200 in and I'm kind of towards the back middle of the pack.
Take a look, Don.
Alright, as I mentioned, I am going to make a full video talking about this race because to this day it is still my 1500 meter PB. In fact, I actually still haven't raced a 1500 since this day. So in the future, I'm going to make a video where I talk in detail about how I was going leading into this race, my form, how I'd been training, and kind of what I was expecting going into my final race of the 2019 English summer, where I ended up running a big PB of 3:40.43 for the 1500 meters to place 5th. But for the time being, I'm going to play it through and speed it up for you to see, but definitely in future you can expect to see a video detailing this race.
Archie! You got it? Right. Oh, hang on. So you got... Oh, you got that.
Race is on. Who's this coming up the track?
Ethan Hussey, is it?
35, 6, 7, 38, 14.
Alright, so for me that race pretty much couldn't have gone any better. Obviously I got dipped on the line by Archie Davis and George Mills to go from 3rd to 5th in the last kind of 5 or 10 metres, but I was really happy. I didn't really care about where I finished. I went from a PB of 3:44 to 3:40, so I'd taken 3.5 seconds off my PB, and it was just the perfect day for it. It was a really good race, and I don't really think there's too much that could have gone better for me on that day, other than probably finishing a bit stronger and holding on to that 3rd position. But as I mentioned, I really didn't care. I'd taken such a huge chunk of time off my 1500 meter PB, and I had all of my family there watching, so it was a very good day for me. In the preview for this episode of Unfinished Business, I mentioned that I was going to talk about my 4-minute mile as well, but I have actually got a full video on that where I show the race and I commentate all the way through it as well. So I'm not going to bore you and do that all over again, but I will leave a link in the description to that video. And as well, if you don't want to go down into the description to find that race, you can click on this link up here and that will take you to my 4th lap mile. I ran that in America in February this year against Edwin Kurgat, the current NCAA cross-country champion. It was held at Iowa State, a flat 300 meter track, Pat Casey was in there, who runs for Under Armour. So that was another good day for me. I'm hoping that in my next indoor season in America, I'll be able to take a big chunk off that time and get well under the 4-minute barrier. That was my first season ever running indoors. So I think this experience of running against these names and running in big races and actually running indoor will do me a lot of good going into my second indoor season. And so I'm hoping for some big things next indoor season. Alright, so that wraps up this video and that wraps up the Unfinished Business series as a whole. I've really enjoyed making these and I hope you've enjoyed kind of watching my journey from late 2016 when I was 17 years old right through to pretty much where I'm at today. As I mentioned, with that 340 1500, I will be making a video in the future where I commentate on the full race and kind of explain in detail my thoughts and feelings, how I'd been training going into that race and what I was kind of expecting on the day. I just want to quickly say a big thank you to everyone who's been a part of the channel so far as well. And with that, we will see you in the next video.
Next week on the FOGDOG exclusive. FOGDOG is back for part 3 of the 1000 subscriber special, where he will be finishing off the Q&A.
We've just got word that FOGDOG is about to finish his morning run.
See all of this and more next Thursday, June 25th, 7 p.m. Central Time.
Only on the FOGDOG exclusive.